Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a later edition of your Lunch Break Live with me, Ivana. If you have been keeping up with the news this morning, specifically just about 30 minutes ago at 11 a.m., you might have seen that Alabama Governor Kay Ivey has issued a statewide mask ordinance. Now, again, that happened about 32 minutes ago is when that press conference started. And we heard from both Governor Kay Ivey and the state health officer, Dr. Scott Harris. And again, we got that announcement of the statewide mask ordinance. We got a little bit more about the rules and regulations and specifics regarding that. And we learned more about when that order was going to go into effect, when it ends, and things like that. So our own Mike Kaysen is here today to help us kind of digest this order a little bit, tell us the specifics, and answer any questions y'all might have. So if you have questions about that press conference, let me know here in the comments. I'm going to be looking through them, and we will answer what we know, and we'll find out what we don't. So thanks so much, Mike, for coming to explain this for us. And just tell us a little bit about what happened at this press conference and what this new ordinance, what the governor said about the new ordinance.
Well, mainly both the governor and Dr. Harris stressed how bad the numbers have trended in the last few weeks, and as recently as overnight with over like 2,100 new cases. And the governor just pointed out, she just favored the personal responsibility approach, but she said, it's obviously not working. So she decided to impose the statewide mask ordinance, which applies if you're in a public place with 10 or more people. Let's see, let me look at the specifics. You may have already covered this, but if you're within 6 feet of a person from another household in either an indoor space open to the public, a vehicle operated by a transportation service, or an outdoor public space where 10 or more people are gathered. There's still a lot of exceptions, like if you're out exercising and so forth. But
yeah, I wanted to go ahead and address that quickly. One of our commenters, Steve, he said, if you are exercising outside, do you have to wear a mask? Steve, what this ordinance says is that if you are in a public area in close contact with somebody from another household, that is when this mask ordinance goes into effect. Also, if you are outside with groups of 10 or more people. So if you are outside exercising alone, you don't need to wear a mask. Is that right, Mike?
That is correct. That is okay. Absolutely right. I apologize. I'm having to plug my phone in because it's about to die. So.
No, you're fine. We all understand. Luckily, Mike, if y'all didn't know, Mike was actually the one streaming that press conference for us. So I'm sure that battery is going a little bit dead. So again, if you were wearing if you are asking if you need to be wearing a mask when you go outside to walk, to run, to exercise outside, if you are alone or with somebody from your household, or if you're outdoors and with a group of less than 10, so 9 or less, then you do not have to, this mask ordinance does not apply. Now, do you know anything more about these exceptions that the governor and Dr. Scott Harris mentioned?
Well, there's exceptions if you're just unable to wear a mask for health reasons. I left my sheet over where I had my phone originally, so I don't have it in front of me. So if you could help me with that,
absolutely. Yes, let me look it up, guys. I got to pull up another tab on my computer here. We're looking through those exceptions. There is some information that the governor sent out about young children having to wear a mask. And she says that this ordinance is covering people in situations, and I'm reading this from the order, where a mask use is incompatible with the realities of life. For example, children 6 or younger, people with certain medical conditions or disabilities, eating and drinking, medical and dental procedures, and so on. That's a quote from this order, and we can get that for you on AL.com as well. And I can see if our producers can put a link in the comments so you can go read that. But it continues to say there are categories of exceptions for exercise, for communicating with an audience, not sure what that means, and for certain essential job functions. An additional category carves out narrow exceptions for protected activities like voting and religious worship. And this ordinance says while for voting and religious worship, masks are not required, they are strongly encouraged. So those are a couple of those exceptions. Again, if you have questions, let us know. We will make sure that that is somewhere where everybody can see it and read it for themselves. Now, Mike, something that we've all, I think, come to understand a little bit more recently, but the governor said face coverings. Actually, it wasn't necessarily. It doesn't have to be a medical grade mask. Can you talk about that and what exactly qualifies as a mask?
I believe the order says any face covering, cloth face covering, or just any sort of face covering. I don't think there's any specific type of covering required, but the homemade cloth covers or the disposable covers, I believe they all qualify and complying with the order.
Jennifer asked, is it true there will be a $500 fine? Jennifer, the governor and Dr. Scott Harris said that they were not expecting, or rather they didn't know what to expect regarding enforcement, but they said that there would be, and there is written down somewhere, there is a $500 fine or jail time enforcement. Mike, can you tell us anything else about what they said about enforcement specifically? We do know that the $500 fine and jail time is an option, but it doesn't seem like those are options that the state wants to use if they can get around it.
Right, and I think that's been the same penalty that's been an option this whole time there's been a state health order. I think that's always been the possible penalty, but the governor said repeatedly that the goal is not to give people tickets or to fine people, but to inform them. And she was asked several times about enforcement, and she just kind of kept repeating that point. So nobody has said, well, the police are not going to fine you, but the gist of the comments is that that's not the goal. The goal is just to provide more incentive and stress the urgency of people wearing masks, because the numbers are just heading in the wrong direction.
Right. There were several comments made by both the governor and by Dr. Scott Harris about these numbers trending in a bad direction. They're trending up and not down, which is what we want. I'm going to pull out my notes here that I took during that press conference, and the Dr. Scott Harris said that there has been more than 18,000 cases in 2 weeks alone. And that puts our state numbers, our state COVID numbers, to over 58,000 total cumulatively. So those are big numbers. Also, our death toll has risen to 1,183. And Dr. Scott Harris said that between 40 and 45 of those deaths were just reported in today's numbers. Those are new deaths coming in through that information that the state Department of Health receives. So these numbers, like the state health officer and Governor Ivey mentioned, are trending upward and have been. I think overnight the governor said that there were 2,141 new cases reported in Wednesday's numbers versus Tuesday's numbers. And again, that means that we have more than 1,000 deaths, including several dozen that were added just overnight. So those are some high numbers. And Mike, did you get a sense from the governor or from Dr. Scott Harris that they felt that if people follow this mask ordinance and wear face coverings, that we could see those numbers trend down?
Well, I think that's the whole idea. I think the other side of it is that if people don't follow this order, that it'll continue to get worse. And Dr. Harris really sounded the alarms about hospital capacity, and it sounds like we're on the brink of filling up a lot of hospitals. Some of them, I believe he said, are already at capacity. Others are near it. So again, that's a good point, Mike. I'm glad you mentioned that. I took some notes on that, but I overlooked it for a second. Dr. Scott Harris said that there are 30 hospitals across Alabama that have, quote, very limited capacity in their ICUs or no capacity. And that means that the state ICU beds capacity, there's only 12% of those ICU beds and that ICU capacity left across the state. And he said that was not good. The governor said we are getting dangerously close to getting to a point where our state ICUs and the hospitals across our state of Alabama are not going to be able to handle the cases and the hospitalizations for COVID that are coming in. And that was something that was very worrisome to both Dr. Scott Harris and to Governor Ivey. Something I want to mention quickly too, I haven't seen comments about it yet, but I have a feeling that people are thinking this. I thought it was interesting that Dr. Scott Harris made a point of saying, look, our testing
our numbers are not going up because of more testing. He said that is not a correlation here. He said that it's not a reflection of testing because while testing may have increased, the percentage of positive cases is what is looked at more than those numbers. And he said between 16 and 17% of the tests are positive right now, and that's compared to about a 12% positive rate several weeks ago. So he said that that's the number they're really looking at, is when that percentage of positive tests is rising.
Right. He did make that point, yes.
There is something, go ahead, Mike. I'm going to look through these comments while you.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to what you said, but you clearly explained that these rising case numbers are not just the results of more people getting tested, although more people are getting tested.
Right, and I think that's something that is something that a lot of people think in their mind, that, oh, well, there's more positive cases because of the higher testing numbers. But Dr. Scott Harris made a good point about that percentage positive number, and that might not be something that those of us that are not in the medical field, including you and I, would maybe be the first to think about. There's an interesting comment from Wanda here, and I just want to clear this up. The ordinance goes into effect tomorrow, which would be Thursday at 5 p.m. That order continues through July the 31st, I believe, again at 5 p.m.
That's right. Yes.
Okay, so I think a couple people were a little bit confused, believing that maybe the ordinance didn't start until July the 31st, but that's not the case. It actually starts tomorrow, Thursday, July the 16th at 5 p.m. and goes through July the 31st. Now, Mike, we know that this is July. This order expires at the end of July, which means that next month is August, and that's back to school month for many people here in the state, and parents, grandparents, caregivers. What did the governor say about schools, and if this mask ordinance would be continued to get kids back to school?
The governor was asked about, there was a state board of education meeting yesterday where some lawmakers from both parties urged the state to adopt a statewide plan, including hiring a lot more nurses and creating some isolation spaces in schools and so forth. And the governor said that the status of that is Superintendent Dr. Eric Mackey has been asked to come up with a plan by Friday. I mean, the state has already come up with a plan, but I think the implication was to incorporate some of what the state lawmakers and others were saying to supplement what the State Department of Education has already come up with, to, I guess, add more details. But I think previously they'd mostly left it up to local boards, and it sounds like that will be more details and more requirements are going to be added to that.
And the current order that we're under, this amended Safer at Home order, we've seen several amendments to this order, that is actually going, that also expires on the 31st, correct?
Correct, right.
And we don't know any details about whether that will be continued or what happens after July 31st.
We don't. And, the governor stressed again that, she could come back and amend this at any time, which she did today, because today was an amendment to the order that expires July 31st, and she, left open the possibility of making other changes if things don't improve.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike. I actually wrote that down as well. She said that she has said from the beginning she reserves the right to come back and amend that order. And she said that she does not want to close things back down again. She does not want to hurt the economy. She said that the state depends on small businesses and people need their livelihood, their checks to live. And that was something that the governor said. But she said that she is trusting Alabama to do the right thing, to wear a mask, to practice social distancing and follow those guidelines so that she doesn't have to come back and shut those things down. But again, she and Dr. Scott Harris said the same thing. But again, the governor has said that she reserves the right to come back and make changes. That does not mean that changes couldn't happen before this July 31st order expires, correct?
Correct, right.
Greg, I'm glad you said this in our comments because it reminds me to do something. So Greg says a comment regarding no shirt, no shoes, no service. That's something we've all seen, especially kind of down around the beaches. We've all seen that. Let me go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen for y'all, so give me just 1 second. But the governor actually put out some graphics, we'll call them, for businesses across the state to use and put on their doors so that people would be aware and know they have to wear masks. I'm sharing them on my screen right now. I'm going to slowly scroll through them so you can see what these graphics look like. The governor did encourage media to share them, and they are available on the state's website. If you need them, we'll make sure we leave a link here for you. But I thought it was interesting that you said that, Greg, because there's actually one of these graphics that says something similar. So there are several different iterations of this graphic. But again, this is saying mask. The first one says mask required for entry. Second one says thank you for wearing a mask. And while I scroll through these, I don't want to read all of them out loud, Mike, but while I scroll through these, can you give us any sort of update on what the governor said businesses needed to do regarding these signs, or needed to do regarding people coming into businesses to make sure they were wearing masks and following the state ordinance?
I don't recall anything specific she said about that, other than, just continuing to stress the importance of asking or requiring your customers to wear masks. Well, I guess it would be requiring at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry,
Again,
I don't have much to add to what the graphics say.
These are these graphics that the state sent out, and they are encouraging businesses to use them for their doors or other points of entry for people to know that they need to wear a mask. And while we're looking at these, there is something that I thought was interesting the governor said, and you mentioned it earlier, Mike. She said, we need to use personal responsibility. She said, I'd rather people use personal responsibility than a government order. But she said, apparently, since our cases are trending upwards and not going down, which is what we need, she said that apparently people are not following that rule and those ordinance and that personal responsibility. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these high numbers, right?
Right. Yes, she did say that. And I know you and I were both at Tommy Tuberville's election night watch party last night. And there was, after it became clear Coach Tuberville had won the election, it was really, nobody was really observing social distancing, or very few people were wearing masks, and it was a little bit alarming to see. And I know it was a celebratory moment, and that's understandable, but it was an example of people, to a large extent, are still not taking this seriously enough, I thought.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. I do want to talk about that in just a second, but this is Greg, I think it was, that made that comment. This is the graphic that reminded me of your comment. It says, no mask, no shop, no service. Again, these are graphics. They're not made by us at AL.com. They were sent out by the governor's office. There is a mandate in the state of Alabama logo here, and they're available for businesses to print and to use on the state website. If you need a link to it, we'll make sure you get it, but it is available publicly. Now I can show y'all that again if you'd like to see it in a second, but I want to take a second and talk about what Mike just mentioned, because there were two campaign events last night. It was election day in Alabama. Jeff Sessions had his event in Mobile. Tommy Tuberville had his in Montgomery. We saw very different things at those parties, for lack of a better word. And in Jeff Sessions, it was more of a media was limited to a room that was just media. It was not public in that room until former Attorney General, former Senator Jeff Sessions came in and spoke and made his concession speech. But in Montgomery, where Mike and I both were, there were a decent bit of people in this ballroom at a watch party. And after the race was called and former coach Tommy Tuberville took the stage, made his victory speech, and he got off the stage, I've got all of this on a live video. We can link it here if y'all want to see it. But Tommy Tuberville, who's now the Republican nominee for that U.S. Senate seat, he will face Doug Jones in November. He walked off of the risers from the stage, and people, very, very few, as Mike said, besides media, I think media were all wearing masks, but very few people in attendance were, and people were just kind of grabbing the coach, hugging the coach, taking pictures, and asking him to sign signs, passes, hats, things like that. And it was something that the hotel, when you walked into the hotel, there were signs, I think Mike and I both saw them, that said face covering was required. There were temperature checks required before you got into that party for both people attending and for press. But once people got in that ballroom, there were very few masks that Mike and I saw throughout the evening.
Right. And yeah, it was an example of people disregarding what the experts are saying. And again, I understand it was a celebratory moment, and but it was, there were hundreds of people in there, and not just around the coach, but everybody, throughout the room. There was a lot of people in close contact. So it was a little bit alarming, or at least a good example of people not taking this seriously. At least
I think. Right. I think that's a fair comparison. I do know when I left Montgomery, I got in the car, I got our hand sanitizer out to use it, and it was in a spray bottle, and I somehow sprayed it on my face. So I guess that at least I got some of those maybe germs off of my face. I'm sure that is not recommended, and that was not intended, but there were a lot of people in very close quarters at the Tommy Tuberville party that were not wearing masks last night. And again, if you need to see all of that, and if you'd like to kind of confirm what Mike and I are saying, I do have that on live video from last night. We can link it here, or you can check it out in our live video section. Sandra, yes, this order does go through Thursday. That is July the 16th. I had to look at the date. July the 16th at 5 p.m. through July the 31st at 5 p.m. Mike, do we have any idea why these orders are starting and ending at 5 p.m.?
No, sorry, I don't know why they chose 5 p.m., but it seems to be the consistent practice.
Jerry says, why are masks not requiring at voting? Mike, I'll let you take that one.
Well, the Attorney General last week issued an advisory, or just put some advisory guidelines, gave the county some advisory guidelines on the election, and it's just strictly a legal thing that your right to vote cannot be taken away because you refuse to wear a mask. So, practically speaking, I don't know how much impact that had, because I think most people were probably willing to wear a mask to vote, or wanted to wear a mask to vote. But if it came down to it, a county voting place, the poll workers could not say, well, you can't vote unless you put on a mask. Legally, they could not do that.
And again, that's a very similar explanation to why masks are not being required in places of worship, correct?
I guess so. I hadn't really thought of that. I'm sure that point has been raised, but that's a good point.
And that again was listed in those exceptions. Now I'm going to scroll through some more of the graphics here if y'all didn't catch them. But I do want to address something from Jen Smith. Jen Smith is talking about schools opening and things like that. It was interesting. The governor did actually make a point saying that we need to open schools, saying Alabama does need to open schools. And again, this order is going to expire on July the 31st. So that's just several weeks from now. And most schools, I would say, are not going to start until next month. So it is, we're waiting to see if those masks and this mask ordinance will be required past July the 31st into August, and also in schools. Mike, can you tell us again when those plans for the schools and when the state superintendent is supposed to make some announcements regarding that?
Well, I believe, if I heard the governor right, that was expected to happen on Friday or by Friday. An update to the plan the superintendent has already announced.
Mm-hmm. So we're expecting that on Friday. Again, though, this ordinance is going to expire July the 31st. Obviously, things could change between now and then. We could get another announcement from the governor if she decides to extend that order or change it in any way. But right now, it goes through the 31st. So it seems like this is a several week iteration of different orders. Now, Mike, can you tell us a little bit? The governor made a comment saying, and I'm just trying to find the exact wording in my notes, but saying something to the effect that if you're frustrated by changing guidelines, by changing regulations, and everything changing, so am I. And that's because everything is just developing as the days go by.
Yes, that's what she said, and she's right. It's hard to keep up with, even for reporters like me, or that's our job, is to keep up with it. It's it can get confusing, but it's just nobody's ever been through anything like this before, and the governor and citizens of Alabama are just going to have to sort of go with the flow, or keep up with it the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was looking through. Lily asked about what's the link for the signage. I'll get it for you, Lily. I can't pull that link and copy and paste it right now to you, but as soon as we get off of our video, I'll make sure that you get that link. It's available on the governor's website, but there's a lot there on that website, so we'll make sure that you get it. Couple quick more questions. Tiffany asked, how will this work as far as leagues that are still playing sports like baseball and softball?
That is a great question. It sounds to me like the requirement would not prohibit that, but would require, if the gatherings are 10 or more, that everybody would be wearing a mask.
Right. I'm looking through some of these frequently asked question pages that the governor sent us regarding this order, and I'm not seeing anything necessarily about little league sports, or not even little league, but just sports in general, and team sports. I do know that in the ordinance, they said that if you are in public area, close contact with people not in your household, you must wear a mask. Also, if you are outside in a group of 10 or more people, you have to be wearing a mask. So unless it's a sport where maybe it's 9 or less, Tiffany, it seems like that they would be required to if they are not able to maintain their distance, but that's not anything we've gotten a lot of clarity about. Hopefully we'll get some clarity on that for you soon, Tiffany, and I'm sure a lot of people and a lot of parents, caregivers have the same questions, because we know a lot of kids are out playing those sports and doing things right now. Mike, is there anything else?
My grandson's been playing baseball, and the way they've done it is that the kids have worn masks when they're in the dugout, but not with their at bat or on base or out in the field. So, and then some of the families there are wearing masks, some are not. But this would indicate that the requirement to wear a mask would apply to to people watching athletic event like that.
We'll make sure that again you get some links to these things that people need for the graphics or other things from the state. We'll make sure we provide that. Again, we'll have all of this on AL.com if you would like to go and read it and take a little more time to digest it. Some quick shout outs I like to do here. Vicki is saying that she has immunocompromising illness. We're thinking about you, Vicki. Please stay safe and make sure that you are keeping others and yourself safe as well. Majori, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, whose husband is a veteran. Thank you so much for his service and for all of our veterans for their service to us and to our country. So thank you so much for all of you, and anybody else that I didn't see maybe who said that they had medical conditions. We're thinking about you and hoping for the best and that you stay safe. So Mike, thanks so much for coming here, explaining this order a little bit to us. Again, we'll give you links here to provide you with what you need for all of your up-to-date coronavirus information about the COVID in Alabama. Please keep up with AL.com for all of that. And again, Mike, thanks for coming today to explain this. And everybody else, we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Ivana. Thanks for having me.